You're watching Saturday Anime on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Greetings, this is Reverend Paul, and this is Studio Chojin Raw, and today we are going to talk about the classic tentacle hentai series, Angel of Darkness. Now, Angel of Darkness is a 4-part OVA series that came out in 1994 and was directed by Kanenari Tokiwa. The Japanese title of Angel of Darkness is Inju Kyoshi, which translates to Lewd Beast Teacher, which I think is a much more accurate title than the very vague Angel of Darkness. Now, even though Angel of Darkness came out in the mid-90s, it feels more in line with the horror hentai that was coming out in the late 80s, and in some ways I actually kind of feel like it's almost like a spiritual successor to The Legend of Daon, because the original story supervisor for Angel of Darkness is Yukihiro Makino, who also worked on The Legend of Daon as a key animator and mech designer and worked on Guy as a monster designer. So I think Yukihiro Makino brings a lot of influence from Guy and The Legend of Daon into Angel of Darkness. Angel of Darkness is also similar to Le Blue Girl in the sense that, like Le Blue Girl, Angel of Darkness also has a live-action adaptation. And I actually think the first episode of the Angel of Darkness live-action is a hell of a lot better than the first episode of the Le Blue Girl live-action. The live-action Angel of Darkness movie also stars Saiko Seno, who is probably best known as Metalder. And you want to know what? After seeing Saiko Seno in the Angel of Darkness movie, I think he makes a better horny beast teacher than tokusatsu superhero. So Angel of Darkness begins with this dude named Professor Goda, and he is walking through this construction site, and he comes upon this tree. And then when he uses his shovel and he breaks open this tree, there's like a weird tentacle creature in here, and it attacks Professor Goda. If you are a tentacle expert like myself, you know when a person is attacked by tentacles, there's basically 3 possible outcomes. Sometimes when you are attacked by tentacles, as everybody knows, you are viciously tentacle raped. Other times when you're attacked by tentacles, you turn into a Guyver. That's pretty fucking cool. And then sometimes when you're attacked by tentacles, you could be possessed by a demon. Now, looking at Professor Goda, he's kind of walking funny, so it's possible that he was tentacle raped, but I'm thinking he's probably just possessed by a tentacle demon. So we flash forward a couple of months, and that construction site has been transformed into a very modern 1990s women's university. And on the first day, during the reception for new students, we are introduced to Atsuko and her girlfriend, Sayaka. Atsuko and Sayaka are adjusting pretty well, even though Atsuko is kind of pissed off that her sister Yuko's there. And Yuko is not only there, she is a teacher at this school, and she is constantly cock-blocking Atsuko with every opportunity. But Atsuko is still having a good time with Sayaka. We get a nice little montage of Atsuko and Sayaka hanging out together. We get to see Atsuko playing lacrosse. It seems pretty clear that these two are having a pretty fun time at this school. And if that is not clear enough, we get this very awesome scene of Atsuko and Sayaka having some sexy time in the bed. We get some cool scissoring action. I think there's some very awesome bouncing boobs in this sequence. Meanwhile, we find out right underneath the newly built school chapel is an anime sex dungeon. And Professor Goda is there with the director of the school, and they are torturing the freshman students. And the reason they are doing this is because Professor Goda has kind of unearthed this creature that he has in this kind of fishbowl, and it turns out this creature feeds on vaginal extract. In other words, this is a monster that eats pussy juice. So Professor Goda and the school director basically have to do weird sex torture on people and then use this big pussy juicing machine in order to feed this crazy tentacle creature. So one day, Atsuko is hanging out, she's playing lacrosse, and Sayaka is hanging out in the chapel. She is praying to sweet Jeebus, and suddenly she hears weird noises coming from the grate on the floor. Now, when Sayaka tells Atsuko this, Atsuko's like, well, you want to know what? We need to go down there and see what the fuck is going on. One night, Atsuko and Sayaka, they sneak into the chapel, and then they open up the grate, and then they crawl down there, and then they come upon Professor Goda's anime sex dungeon. And this dungeon is a really fucked up place. There are dicks growing on the walls and the ceilings. He has electrodes on chicks' boobs. He has chicks strapped to these weird kind of gynecological chairs. Professor Goda is doing some pretty fucked up, sexy experiments to the chicks who go to this school. And it is all happening in a dick room. I mean, it's literally a room with dicks on the walls. Now, Sayaka and Atsuko are pretty blown away that this is happening literally right under their noses. And then Professor Goda notices that they're there. And then so he starts to chase them. And then Sayaka and Atsuko beat feet and try to get as far away from that fucked up motherfucker as they possibly can. Atsuko sends Sayaka ahead of her, and then she closes the door and she tells Sayaka, get my sister, tell Yuko about the fucked up shit we just saw, and I'm gonna try to take care of this shit. So Sayaka runs to find Yuko. Meanwhile, Atsuko is being pursued by Professor Goda's fucked up tentacles. Atsuko jumps out of a window, and then she tries to escape, but then she comes upon this ledge. Now at this moment, Atsuko is trapped. She's got no place to go, so she turns around and then she ends up tripping and falling down into the dark cavernous pit. When Atsuko wakes up, it's pretty fucked up because she is basically strapped to the floor like Gulliver in Gulliver's Travels, and she is being attacked by these really horny dwarves. She has dwarves on her fucking crotch, she has dwarves on her tits, and they're fucking biting the shit out of her. And when I say they're biting her, they're not giving her like sexy love bites. No, these messed up little things are biting her so hard they are drawing blood. And this is a bit of an aside, but in Shin Ultraman, when Hiroko was really big and then she was wandering around the city and then she passed out and then they had her strapped to the floor with tarps over her. When I was watching that scene, I was reminded of Angel of Darkness, and for a couple of seconds, I fully expected there to be a bunch of horny hobos all over Hiroko's body, and Atsuko's like, man, I gotta get the fuck out of here, this sucks. And then suddenly, this fairy dude named Ram comes, and then he tells the dwarves, what are you guys doing? This is really screwed up. You should not be doing this. And the dwarves are like, human beings have awakened the dark elemental. That has made us really horny. Like, that is the fucking worst excuse I've ever heard. Like, what does this monster being awakened have to do with you being fucking horny? Ram should not accept this excuse. You probably feel a lot like me and Atsuko, where you're just really fucking confused and you're like, what the fuck is a dark elemental? Don't worry, because our trusted buddy Ram is going to explain. It turns out several, like hundreds of thousands, I don't know, a really long time ago in the fucking past, there were like fairy folk and they hung out by this fucking waterfall and everything was awesome and they basically lived in paradise. Then this dark elemental, I guess he came from space or something. I really think this dark elemental dude really has to be linked to the dude Glowed from The Legend of Daeon, where he's just a fucking horny alien traveling from planet to planet looking for chicks to fuck. Anyway, this dark elemental dude comes out of the sky, he's violating women, and then suddenly all the fairy people get together and they're like, we gotta imprison this dark elemental dude so this guy is not ruining everybody's good time. So it turns out this dark elemental dude is the dude Professor Goda freed at the beginning of the movie. This is the dude who tentacle raped Professor Goda, and now Goda is being possessed by the dark elemental. So Ram tells the dwarves, you gotta help me and Atsuko because we all need to kill the dark elemental. And the dwarves are like, we ain't gonna do that because that seems like a lost cause, so count us out. And then Ram tells Atsuko, all right, well, I guess it's just you and me, cowboy. And so Ram and Atsuko go to kill the dark elemental, but Ram realizes both him and Atsuko alone do not stand a chance against the dark elemental. So Ram and Atsuko, they do the Dragon Ball fusion dance and they merge together. And then Atsuko becomes like this really hot, muscular chick. She's almost like Jade Cargill from AEW. What I've neglected to mention is that when Sayaka ran to Yuko's place to get help, she explained to Yuko the crazy shit they had just seen, and before Yuko could do anything, a bunch of the brainwashed students show up along with Professor Goda, and they kidnap Sayaka and Yuko. Elsewhere, Professor Goda and the director of the school, they have Yuko and Sayaka. They are holding Yuko and Sayaka prisoner. Sayaka is being sexy tortured by some of her classmates because it turns out when Professor Goda extracts the pussy juice of these students, he is somehow able to mind control them. And this is why this OVA series is so fucking awesome. All of this is ridiculous. None of this shit makes any sense whatsoever, but it is entertaining as fuck. So Sayaka is being sexy tortured, and then Professor Goda tells Yuko he has some sick plans for her because what he's going to do is he's going to take this Cthulhu creature and then he's going to shove it up her snatch, and he's basically going to turn her into an Angel of Darkness alien queen, where she is going to be able to produce more freaky dark elemental creatures. Ultimately, Super Atsuko is able to break into the sex dungeon, and then she confronts the director of the school, who she fucking knocks knocks out in one punch. She does have a little bit of a hiccup where she's attacked by a brainwashed Sayaka, but luckily the horny dwarves had a change of heart and they're able to get the weird demon seed out of Sayaka and free her from Goda's brainwashing. As Sayaka is dealing with the director of the school and the dwarves are freeing the other students from Goda's mind control, Goda is completing his transformation into the dark elemental, and he is able to do this by using his tentacles, and he's shoving them inside Yuko, and he's like draining Yuko's life energy, and he is charging himself up. And finally, he is able to complete his transformation into the dark elemental. And it seems like things are pretty fucked up for Yuko, but the dwarves give Yuko her lacrosse stick, and then Yuko is able to throw rocks into Goda's machines, and that fucks up the dark elemental's plans, and then she fucking teleports, and then she rips out this evil motherfucker's heart, saving the day, but it comes at a price, because Ram then separates from Atsuko, and Atsuko reverts back to her normal form. And then Ram tells Atsuko that he needs to go inside Yuko and then pull out the weird squid monster that Goda put inside her, and then he's gonna turn into a fucking tree and seal this thing, hopefully once and for all. And Atsuko, Sayaka, Yuko, and the rest of these students get the fuck out of there. And then Ram turns into a giant tree, saving the day and imprisoning this evil creature once and for all. Now, Angel of Darkness has a reputation of being kind of a trashy anime with no redeeming qualities whatsoever. But I do not think that is an accurate description. Angel of Darkness is pretty crazy and ridiculous, but I do think it has substance as well. I think Angel of Darkness is a very well done OVA. The character designs were done by Kazunori Iwakura, who did the character designs for Daphne in the Brilliant Blue, which I think is very cool. I mean, he also did the character designs for the Art of Fighting anime, which is my answer to like what is the worst anime I've ever seen, but that's besides the point. I think this dude is a good character designer. I think Iwakura's character designs feel of their time. They definitely do feel like character designs that were created in the 90s, but I think they also have a classic 80s feel as well. Also, the art director for Angel of Darkness was Nobutaka Ike, and Nobutaka Ike is a longtime collaborator of Satoshi Kon's. Ike was the art director for Perfect Blue, Paprika, Tokyo Godfathers. Ike is the man who is responsible for imbuing Satoshi Kon's films with all that visual atmosphere, and he brings that same energy to Angel of Darkness. I think the lighting in Angel of Darkness looks great. The rendering on the characters is very atmospheric. Angel of Darkness is also very similar to Kekko Kamen, in the sense Kekko Kamen is a indictment about the Japanese educational system and the way teachers brainwash their students, and we are seeing a similar idea in Angel of Darkness, where throughout the Angel of Darkness series, the teachers are always the bad guys. They are constantly trying to take advantage of the students. And even in this first episode, there is a scene where Atsuko and Sayaka are at like a school reception, and they see that the upperclassmen are all kind of brainwashed, and that scene to me is kind of reinforcing this idea. Angel of Darkness, in its own way, in a very kind of cheeky way, is this kind of criticism of the way teachers brainwash their students into these mindless zombies. The plot of Angel of Darkness is fucking ridiculous. It's one of the most bonkers things you will ever hear. As weird as this sounds, it does have a logic to it. Everything makes sense within the reality of this world, and every action is set up and paid off. Atsuko's physical strength and her martial arts abilities are set up at the party earlier, and then they're paid off when Atsuko uses them to break open the grate. The OVA establishes Atsuko is a great lacrosse player, and Atsuko uses those same lacrosse abilities to kill the Dark Elemental. And you may be rolling your eyes right now saying, well, you know, having a logical screenplay is the bare minimum you should do, but there are plenty of hentais that don't bother to try to make any sense whatsoever. So despite its reputation, I think Angel of Darkness is a pretty interesting anime, especially if you're a lover of crazy tentacle hentai. It's got cool character designs. It doesn't have a lot of sex scenes, but the sex scenes it does have, I think it delivers. And the art direction is by Satoshi Kon's art director. I mean, I think those are three qualities that totally make Angel of Darkness worth recommending. And we are not done talking about Angel of Darkness, because there are 3 more episodes of this OVA. And unlike some OVAs where they get worse with each installment, I think Angel of Darkness gets better. It gets crazier and it gets more ridiculous, and those are things we are going to talk about in the future. This week's question comes from Aiden. And Aiden writes, "Hey man, not sure if this was asked already, but do you watch more seasonal anime or do you stick with watching older stuff?" Thank you, Aiden, for sending me a question. I guess the short answer is I kind of just watch whatever. Most of the time I'm watching older stuff, but if there's something newer that is interesting to me, then I'll check it out. My brother actually watches a lot more newer seasonal stuff than I do. He's the one who turned me on to Dorohedoro, he turned me on to Attack on Titan, but most of the time I'm watching older stuff, especially now because I've reached like a different stage in my life. It's kind of interesting to me to go back and re-watch a lot of this stuff I watched when I was a teenager or in my 20s. It's interesting to look at it with the eyes that I have now. I've also been watching a lot of tokusatsu lately. I've been watching Metalder, I've been re-watching Kamen Rider Black. I generally just kind of watch whatever, but it does usually lean on the older side. So with that said, Aiden, I hope that answers your question. I know I've been away for a while, but I want this to be the start of regular uploads. And the one thing I could definitely say in my defense is even though I have not been uploading videos regularly, I have been working on a lot of other things. I made a lot of progress with my comic. I want to start doing figure reviews. I've been getting equipment to do that. A lot of work has been going on behind the scenes at Studio Chojin, so stick around. There's definitely more to come. So with that said, this is Reverend Paul saying, until we meet again.